Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Stoneridge Connect 2025. My name is Tyler Allard. I'm going to walk you through really quickly what Azure is and how to use it. Jumping right in. Today, we'll introduce Azure a little bit, right? Help you understand how it works, jump into the value add proposition for Azure with how it's going to help you collaborate, and also how it's going to enhance your security despite what you may think. So, as we're introducing Azure, the questions I'm hoping to answer is what is it, and also what does it offer? What are the services, and what are the benefits of using Azure? So Azure is a pretty comprehensive cloud solution from Microsoft. In fact, it is the only consistent, comprehensive hybrid cloud on the market today. And Microsoft has built this by leveraging 5 main pillars in its design that it identifies as the apps and infrastructure, data and artificial intelligence, networking, identities, and security and management. Apps and infrastructure being Azure services, hosted VMs, data and AI being the SQL databases and data that you're hosting in the cloud, networking being the magic that ties everything all together, identity being your username, email, password, and whether that be hosted in the cloud or on-prem, also the multi-factor authentication factors that you're leveraging in your environment. And then of course, around all of that is security and management to ensure that your data is safe, and also management tools to administer and have insight into how your environment is being used. At a high level, most of our clients are using these 4 services primarily, being virtual machines. As I mentioned before, those are computers or workstations, servers that you have on-prem, essentially just virtualized and hosted in the cloud. A layer further than that are app services or apps as a service. They're essentially functioning solely in the cloud, and you just interact directly with the application, not needing to sign into another instance or another machine. Databases, likely the backend where all the data is being stored, that's being leveraged by the app services, or perhaps that you're accessing when you sign into that virtual machines. And then it is 2025. AI tools are being rolled out through all of the services, helping us be a little bit more efficient along the way. When it comes to why you would move to a cloud solution, and specifically Azure, the number one reason is that it might actually save you money. You have the ability to control what you're spending money on, when these resources are turned on, when they're turned off. We have a lot of creative levers that we can pull to ensure that you're actually paying for what you use, and might be able to get more for the same amount of money, or get the services you're currently using for a little bit less. When we're talking about scaling up or scaling down, that's another core tenet of Azure infrastructure is its scalability. You can dial it down in the evening when you have less team members running, and then you can scale it up if you release a really successful product and then everybody wants to buy something from your platform. Along with that scalability is, of course, the reliability of the platform. A lot of Microsoft services subscribe to the 5 nines principle, where it will be available 99.999% of the time. And of course, having your data in the cloud, a big question that all of our clients have is security, and Microsoft takes that very seriously. We'll talk a little bit about it later, but there are a lot of security tools that are built into Azure to help give you that peace of mind. Now we know a little bit about what Azure is, but how does it actually work? What is happening on the back end? Well, the short answer is a lot. Over the years, Microsoft has invested a lot of time and resources into Azure, and they have essentially spun it up into a global data center network. Every little blue dot that you see on that map is a region where you can host your machines. I want to be really clear. Each one of those blue dots is not a specific server or a specific data center. Those are regions where you can host your information, and that can be multiple data centers that can be spread across different cities, different geographies, offering services like high availability. If you choose your geography as America, for example, you can host your data in the Pacific Northwest, where I am, and you can also have a redundant copy of it in California. So if there's a natural disaster, ring of fire up here in the Pacific Northwest, your data in California might be safe, although maybe we want to move that closer to Denver for that specific use case. Again, you can also have high availability within your region if that's not what you're too concerned about. But the point is that we have scalability options across the globe. And the other fun part about that is depending on where your client base is, even if it's different from where you and your staff are, you can host it closer to them to ensure that we are optimizing performance for whoever is using the platform that you have hosted in Azure. Now, we talked a little bit about those 4 main stacks that our clients are using, the 4 main components and functionalities for deploying Azure, or how it works in the back end, are compute resources, storage solutions, network capabilities, and then of course management tools. So again, compute resources are virtual machines, virtual servers, anything that is actually crunching numbers. And then storage solutions are for where we're storing the numbers that your applications or machines are crunching. The network capabilities, of course, is how everything talks to each other, whether that be cloud resources or resources that are on-prem. And then the most helpful part for people like myself is the management tools. We can monitor that data. We can control it. We can control who has access to it. We control when it's available. And through all of those different management tools, that's how we can optimize performance and cost for your organization. Now, when I talk about the network capabilities, I'm always saying how it ties everything together, but there is another layer on top of that called the Microsoft 365 Graph API. And that is Microsoft's solution to how they get all of their Azure services and products working together. And the cool thing about this is that it's not dependent on Azure services. It can work with third-party applications as well. This is how you get your functionality like single sign-on. Someone signs it to their computer, they're automatically signed into Office, and they can automatically be signed into the Adobe Cloud as well if that's a product that your company is using. In the back end, it's all tied together. And what that means when you're using Azure is that it's really easy for your team, regardless of the applications they're using or the roles they're performing within the cloud, to collaborate with each other. And let's talk a little bit about how we can improve that collaboration with Azure, create efficiency, save your staff some time, and save you some money. Of course, the primary collaboration tools are going to be Microsoft Teams and SharePoint Online. Likely you're already familiar with Teams. It's that collaboration tool that can be the front end for anything in SharePoint, a front end for other applications. It's a chat tool for teams to communicate. You can host meetings. You can host town halls. Microsoft is constantly revising the services available via Teams to ensure that it is the best collaboration tool on the market. And then SharePoint is the backend for that. And what that means is that any security parameters you have around SharePoint, any security parameters you have around your M365 tenant, and then a level above that, your Azure tenant, all waterfall down into how your team are collaborating with each other. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for collaboration tools. There's other things like Viva Insights and Loop, Stream for recording videos. And Microsoft is constantly adding more tools to help your team collaborate in a more streamlined and efficient way. But outside of the Microsoft stack, you can also tie in third-party applications. If you're looking for a social media management tool, or like I said, the Adobe Creative Cloud, or something like AutoCAD hosted in the cloud, you can tie all of those applications to work into your Azure cloud hosted environment. You can have all of the data at rest in Azure. So all those security parameters I mentioned, all those controls I talked about, they're available for you and your team regardless of what third-party application you're using. And you have insight into all of that because it is all hosted in Azure. And from the end user experience, from the people actually doing the work, it is largely the same. There is no difference to the end user experience. It is essentially seamless. In fact, it might even be better. Less times they have to sign into things, and the data is available to them when they need it, wherever they're working from. This helps help our clients improve their team productivity, not only by lowering those barriers to adoption, but also those management tools I mentioned before. We can see how your team is using these tools and maybe steer them in a way that's slightly more productive to ensure that you're getting the maximum ROI on your Azure cloud hosted solution. Of course, being 2025, Stoneridge is a largely remote company and we love to advocate for that work style. And the really fun part about using Azure is that you're not compromising your security posture by allowing that remote work to happen. You can have secure access to applications via tools like Intune and conditional access. You can control when people can access data or apps. You can control what device they're allowed to access on it. You can even control what people can do inside of the applications on their devices. You can stop people from being able to copy and paste something in Teams and paste it onto their desktop. That is the granularity of control that Azure and the cloud gives you for this data. Of course, that's something that you want to have deployed and you want to be keeping in mind when you're allowing that data accessibility from anywhere. And it says anywhere, and that is possible. But if that's something that you're not too comfortable with, there are gates that you can put in place to allow it from specific locations. So it can be available from anywhere, but that doesn't mean it needs to be available everywhere. And of course, when people have access to their data, that's enhancing team productivity yet again. Team managers out of office, and they need to get their eyes on a contract for approval, we can send a link to that. They're able to view it. They're not able to edit it. They're not able to download it. It's all cloud-based. It's all containerized. But within 10 minutes, you've got that sign off. You're not having to wait till the next business day or whenever else that key point of failure might be coming back to the office. Of course, when we're talking about that data being everywhere, the primary concern with all of the clients I chat with is security, and Microsoft does have you covered. This is just a very high level summary, but as you can see, Microsoft takes security very seriously. We have tools you're probably familiar with, like compliance management, information governance. These are tools that can be automated or manual. It's going to scan data in your environment, see what type of data is inside it. Is there any identifiable information in there? Is there anything like a SIN number, somebody's date of birth, anything like that? You can have that automated or manual searches for any data that you have in Azure. Again, these security tools are comprehensive across the entire Azure suite. As you're moving to a virtual environment, identity and access management is paramount, right? You got to make people are who they say they are when they're signing it to the tenant. So you got tools like multi-factor authentication with even biometric authentication factors, conditional access on who can access what, the list goes on. And then a little bit more in the background that you might not be aware of are threat protection, cloud security through the Defender suite of products, and discover and respond. So if there is some kind of breach, somebody loses their phone, some horrible thing happens, you have the ability to actively respond and perhaps, depending on your licensing, be notified as it happens so you can be reactive as quickly as possible in addition to being proactive. That's all I have for you today, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the chat and have a great rest of your day at Stoneridge Connect 2025.